What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as Hamhocks42 on the internet. And if you're wondering why the hell is he named Hamhocks42, well, might I recommend you take a listen to yesterday's episode where I go into that a little bit more. Anyway, today we are going to be going back to our normal formula of looking at a random magic card every day and talking about it for at least 10 minutes. So here we go. We are on the Gatherer's website. I'm going to go ahead and click that random card button. And today we are looking at Tranquil Thicket. Actually, I believe this is the second time we've looked at Tranquil Thicket. Yep, this is actually a repeat. So here we go, Tranquil Thicket number 2. Now, this one is actually, it's funny, the first one that we looked at, I don't recall exactly which set it was from. I think it was from one of the Commander products. It actually involved some different artwork than this one. So if you're not familiar, well, I'd highly recommend you go check out the other episode, which is, well, I don't know the actual episode number right off the top of my head, and I'm not going to bother looking that up right now because, after all, we are pseudo live. When I say pseudo live, I mean this is completely unedited because, well, I'm putting it out every day, so who has time for that? Ain't nobody got time for that. That's right. Okay, so Tranquil Thicket. It is a land. This particular one that we're looking at is from the dual deck anthology Elves versus Goblins. And I know I commented about the dual decks at least once before about how the artwork that you see on the dual deck cards is usually kind of a fun departure um, from the standards. And I gotta say, one of the things that Wizards seems to be doing a lot nowadays is finding opportunities to print new art on classic cards as they are reprinted. And I really do appreciate that. As I'm recording this, actually, they just recently announced a Secret Lair Ultimate drop that is going to be the enemy colored fetch lands. And there's a part of me that is really, really jazzed about this and thinks it's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And the reason that I'm thinking about that now is looking at, alternate artwork for cards that we know and love. And this particular new bunch of fetch lands that they're printing out has brand new artwork from a bunch of phenomenal Magic artists. Okay, that's cool. I'm really glad they're doing that. It's, because as an opportunity to really showcase some of these phenomenal artists and what they do and what they're capable of. And like I've said before, Magic artists are great. I love them. They're like, seriously, if you're putting art on Magic cards, I'm a big fan. I love what you do because it brings the game to life. Anyway, so but the alternate side of that, the flip side is this particular bundle that they're putting out, this particular Secret Lair Ultimate all fetch drops that they're doing. Um, I was really excited at first because I first started playing back in the Onslaught block. In that time, I cracked a bunch of boosters. I, bought a bunch of the starter decks, a bunch of those packs, and I didn't crack any of the original fetch lands. I didn't get them. And to be honest, at the time, I didn't really understand the value of a solid mana base. Not to mention, in the original Onslaught block, a lot of the um, a lot of the real gems that we see today, like the Shocklands and those kinds of. I mean, there was the original duels were theoretically around, but I didn't really know the game very well, and those were very, very rare. Like, not a lot of people had them. And printing super powerful dual lands with basic land types was something that hadn't really been done a ton, or at least certainly it certainly wasn't on my radar. And my understanding was they were fairly rare. So those fetch lands, I have no doubt that competitive players understood the value and got them early. I don't doubt it at all. But I didn't see the value and I didn't get my hands on any of them. And to be honest, I actually second guessed that. I honestly wonder if I did and ended up trading them away at some point because I just didn't understand what they were. I didn't understand that they had value. Because when you look at at a fetch land on its surface, it's a land that doesn't have for mana. You can tap it, sacrifice it, lose one life, and then go search for, an island or a mountain. If I'm a new player, an island is a basic land and a mountain is a basic land. And that distinction that there are non-basic lands that are islands and non-basic lands that are mountains is something that I'm not going to get right away. So that's something that's meaningful. It is very meaningful, and that's why Scalding Tarns are $100 half the time. As I'm recording this, I think they're floating around 70. And so it's $70 for one land that can fetch you up an island. Like, it's insane how powerful those are. But if you're looking at competitive play in Modern, in Legacy, in I actually, and you know what? I have no doubt that there are people who are going to point out that even as I'm saying these different formats, that maybe they are viable in some and aren't in others. I know if you want to be competitive in Modern, you need all of the fetches that can fetch any any card. Like, actually, you just need as many fetches as you can get your freaking hands on, because they're all good and they give your mana base an obscene amount of consistency. So you just need them if you're going to be competitive in Modern, and you're going to need four of them of each kind, just because it's part of the deal. Um, and if you want your commander deck to be really dialed in and as tuned up as you can possibly get it, they're clutch in that situation too. Um, and so they're reprinting this new bundle of them, and they're marketing it as a Secret Lair ultimate drop or ultimate box or ultimate edition or whatever the hell. And the more I learn about it, the more frustrated I am. Because as someone who does not have access to these frickin' cards, I want them. I want some fetch lands. I want to be able to put a, what is it, Misty Thicket, the green black one. Like, I want to be able to put that in my reanimation commander deck. I want to be able to have one in there and for it to not be that expensive, because it's not worth it in that situation, because half the time I would be going in for a basic, or going in for a shockland, and it's like, it's nice, but it's not clutch. It's to the point where now if I sit across the table from somebody playing commander and they play a fetch land, I'm like, really? Geez, money bags. Whoa. And that's absurd. It's a land. And so, okay, they're finally reprinting fetch lands. And so I'm like, okay, great. We have fetch lands. We have new fancy art on them. Finally, there's going to be the supply to meet the demand. And maybe I'll actually be able to get my hands on a couple of these freaking things so that I can, flesh out some of my commander decks. And so my immediate thought is, okay, maybe the price on the original ones or the older ones are going to, or maybe an older reprint will finally dip a little bit. So maybe I can finally get my hands on them. But now looking at it, I'm realizing this Secret Lair ultimate drop thing, they're only giving 10 to individual game stores. That's it. So there's almost no actual supply increase, and we're looking at these things are probably going to be $200 to $300 for 5 freaking cards when they actually hit retail. Like, it's not going to help. This isn't going to help increase the supply. So I bet you're wondering, what the hell is he talking about? Or you have been keeping up with the news and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's just frustrating. I don't have access to these freaking fetch lands and I want to get my hands on them. I want to get my hands on them because everyone's telling me I want to get my hands on them. Everybody talks, I keep hearing other content creators, I keep hearing other thought leaders, other streamers, other people talking about how amazing these fetch lands are. And I've had some people who are competitive in Modern, like who play Modern, actually break down why they're valuable. And they sound great. They sound like they do really help add a level of consistency to your decks that can really take you to the next level. And that's a level of consistency that I want. And I can't get them. So, okay, so this all is a rant that was spurred on because we landed on Tranquil Thicket here. I've already spoken about Tranquil Thicket in the past, so you please go back and listen to that episode if you want like a full detail on fetch lands. I do really dig or not fetch lands, sorry, cycling lands. I really dig these cycling lands. I think they are very useful. They come in a lot of different shapes. Well, they come in all the different colors, not different shapes. They're a freaking card. They all come in the same shape. There are a lot of different versions of lands like this. They come into play tapped. They produce 1 mana, and you can cycle it away. It helps prevent the card from being a dead draw late in the game. That's really, really useful. There's a lot of value to that. And the reason that I find myself talking about fetch lands here is because, one, it's the news right now. It's the hot thing at the moment. And also part of the show is I knew I would be going off on tangents is something that I need to be able to do on this show if I'm going to be able to keep my sanity pumping out a daily podcast where I'm just sitting in my office talking to myself. So I know that that's something you can expect from me going forward. If that's a problem, I'm terribly sorry. If you're cool with that from time to time, awesome, stick around. I'll do my best to I'll do my best to give you fair warning when it's going to be a rant heavy episode or if it's going to be a more educational one. But anyway, so Tranquil Thicket is a cool cycling land. It's something that's very useful. There are a ton of useful lands out there. Um, and the fetch lands are a specific example of that. The shock lands are also dual lands that come in that allow you to come into play tapped or untapped. And if you're a new player to the game, I would highly recommend that you take a look at some of the I mean, there are a lot of articles out there, a lot of thought leaders talking about the different types of dual lands. That's something that if you want to play tight, competitive 60 card Magic, whether that's standard, whether that's modern, whether that's pioneer, whether they bring back extended someday, whether it's type 2 or type 1 for you old school folks out there, or if it's legacy, vintage, knowing what utility lands are available is clutch. And it's also really fascinating to look at lands side by side and look at their price tag, because a card like Tranquil Thicket is going to probably it's probably going to be a quarter, maybe 50 cents, maybe at most. Actually, you can probably it's been reprinted to death. These things are probably 10 cents, maybe. Like, you can get your hands on these, no problem. You can get your hands on a playset of these, no problem. The main benefit, Tranquil Thicket is a card that is not good in 60 card competitive 1v1 scenarios because it only gives you access to 1 mana and it comes into play tapped. What it prevents is drawing a dead card late in the game. Now, where that's going to be most helpful for you is in Commander, because when a turn cycle can last 20 minutes, especially late in the game when people have a lot of moving parts, top decking a land when you have all the pieces and you just need like one extra thing to just go off, or you have all the mana in the world and you need to draw a thing to do, drawing a land is a real bummer. And this helps you eliminate that, get it out of the way, move this land aside, keep digging into your deck, which is really useful late in Commander games. And the opportunity cost of it coming into play tapped early doesn't really hurt that much. It's not that big of an impact. Meanwhile, in a tight 60 card game, one of your lands coming into play tapped early can be the difference between winning and losing that game. Like, often is. Like, it can be clutch, which is why very few, like if you watch Championship, if you watch like really top tier caliber Magic, very few of those lands come into play tapped unless there is a very good reason for it. The one exception to this that I can think of is the scry lands, the temples that come into play tapped, but they allow you to scry one. So in that situation, you're allowing to smooth over your draw for the next turn, which is helpful. And yeah, and in a lot of the decks where you see that, you see it in Fires, Fires of Invention decks, where the land coming into play tapped, especially late in the game, doesn't really have that big of an impact on the play. Meanwhile, being able to dig for your engine, like being able to dig for your combo pieces, is very important. And so that makes sense. But like, there are other cards out there that come into play tapped with no like other bonus. They just come into play tapped and they give you access to two types of mana. When I first started on Arena, they gave every single player a full playset of all of them, in addition to all the basic lands, because that's how useless they were perceived to be. They are the cheap versions of the good dual lands. And those good dual lands are worth a ton of money. And the bad dual lands are worth almost nothing. And it's really shocking to see. And it's very interesting to look at them side by side. Thornwood Falls, 1 blue, 1 green, comes into play tapped, you gain a life. That is worth about 5 cents. I have no doubt that there are people who are like lighting cigars with those right now. They're just useless. Meanwhile, you have Breeding Pool. It taps for 1 blue, 1 green. It is an island and a forest. And when it comes into play tapped, unless you pay 2 life, and then it comes into play untapped. So that is a situation where the versatility, it can come into play untapped if you need that mana this turn. Great. It's an island and a forest, so you can fetch it with things like Farseek or the fetch lands. And that's the other thing. If you have a fetch land that allows you to go grab a forest, any of the fetch lands that allow you to grab a forest, you can grab Breeding Pool put it into play untapped, and then tap it for blue. And so it gives you access to blue mana just because it allowed you to grab a forest. Like that's why those fetch lands are so freaking redonkulous. But my point, breeding pool is worth like $20. And so breeding pool is worth $20, whereas Thornwood Falls, which is very similar on the surface. At the end of the day, they're both lands. They both tap for one blue, one green. One always comes into play tapped. One comes into play tapped about half the time, or one you can have come into play tapped. Is the difference of about, almost $20. That's bonkers. Like, and I think breeding pool's around $20. It might be closer to 15, but in any case, they're expensive. They are an expensive card, and so that's the disparity in lands is really shocking. And the funny thing is, if you're playing casual, if the point of the game is to have fun with your friends and you're just playing kitchen table jank, you're not going to see that big of a difference in actual gameplay. Now, if you're trying to top eight a pro tour, or if you're trying to make it to the pro tour, spend the money, get the really nice lands. You will see a difference in your win percentage by having them in your deck. You will, 100% all day, every day. But if you are a casual player like me, they are not worth the cost, at least where they are today. And the reason that I was super, super excited to see that they were finally, after so many years and so much rhetoric, finally going to reprint fetch lands, I thought for a second that one mechanically interesting style of land could actually be affordable for somebody like me. And the more I learn about it, the more I realize that's just not going to happen, and that's a bummer. It's just a big old bummer. Anyway, I'm hopeful that someday that'll change, and I hope that the reason it changes is because more of them become available. I do not hope that the demand decreases, because if the demand for the fetch lands decreases, it is because the game is becoming less popular. And that's not something I want to see. I want to see a point where the cards are actually matching, where the supply matches the demand. That's what I want to see. And I don't want the demand to go anywhere. This game is amazing. It is so much fun. I want as many people playing this game as I can. Please, everybody, come in here. Come in, have some fun. We love this game. It is great. There's a reason that I'm spending so many damn hours talking about it on this silly podcast and on my stream. It's a wonderful game. Come out and play. And please don't be scared by the prices, because unless you're playing at that professional level or aspiring professional level, you don't need to spend that much money. Cards like Tranquil Thicket can get you there. Also, fun note, the Tranquil Thicket that we looked at in the past, it had artwork depicting a tree. Like, it had a tree that was over on its side, and I commented on that because I thought it was really interesting that the land that comes into play tapped is being depicted with a feature of the landscape being like on its side as though it was tapped. And I'm looking at the artwork for this specific one done by Heather Hudson that also has a tree on its side. I get a kick out of that, and I can't help but wonder, was that intentional? Or who decided that? Where was that intentional? Was that the artist, or was that the art director? Is that something that the artist knew? Oh, I'm doing this for Tranquil Thicket, so I need to make sure that, how can I make a forest but show that it comes into play tapped? Oh, a tree on its side. That makes sense. Or did the art director look at all of these, whoever it was, I'm not sure who was responsible, especially as this art was selected. Did they look at all of the forests, all the forest art that had been submitted, and they were like, oh, that one has a tree on its side. Yeah, you could be Tranquil Thicket. That makes sense. Because I could also imagine this on a basic forest. It would make sense. Actually, most of the cycling lands, their artwork could fit on the basic land as well, in my opinion. Anyway, it's good stuff. This is a lot of fun. Thank you for ranting with me. It has been a delight, as always. I am Graham, also known as Hamhawks42 on the internet. I stream over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Hamhawks42. I look forward to seeing you there, and I will catch you next time.